Welcome, everyone. I'm Brent Hoskins. I serve as Executive Director of the Business Technology Association, and we'd like to welcome you today to this BTA Building My Business webinar. Today's webinar is What's Happening in the Industry, Imaging Industry, to be presented by Andy Slawetsky, who's President of Industry Analysts, Inc., as you all know. Special thanks to Sharp Electronics Corporation, our sponsor for today's webinar. The company's been very supportive of BTA and the dealer channel. We were talking about that a moment ago, how we welcome seeing Mike Marusik at so many BTA events through the years. Sharp has been a continuous member of the association for nearly 22 years. If you have questions along the way, just type them into the chat or the Q&A there on the screen, and then we will address those at the end of the presentation. So with that, let's get started. Andy, I'll turn it over to you.
What's happening? Great to see you, Brent. It is an honor to be on another BTA annual kickoff, a webinar. I guess this is becoming a little bit of a habit, something I really enjoy to do. We have about an hour to go through what I would say is going on in the industry. And we're going to I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I think Brent's going to hopefully make the presentation available to you guys afterwards, but just a little bit about just some of our numbers over the last year. We had a phenomenal year, over 1 million page views, almost 300,000 website visitors, 3,600 views of BTA articles. That is a pretty high number for us. And we had a record number of newsletter reads. We had over almost 750,000 opens and reads of our newsletters. So 1 million views of our YouTube videos, always nice. Spent the year, it was a very, very busy year for us as well as you guys, I'm sure. And we know it because we were there, right? Me and Jake were out there, mostly me, but Jake came with me on a few of these trips. A couple of times at DEX, we had a POA event, Marco, UTEC, KDI. We stopped in, I was at ITG Arizona a couple of times, once actually the wrong week, all the way out to Arizona for that. But you can see we spent a lot of time with some just amazing dealers. And if there's an event that you guys have going on, and it's something that you want some coverage on, I'd always be honored to come down and see your people, see your shop and your operation. Very busy as far as other events going, typical BTA events. There was Chicago, there was Asheville, there was Orlando. I didn't go to all of them. I went to 3 out of 4 of them. These are all links, by the way. Most of these are pictures of the events. So if you want to go through these afterwards, you can hit some of these. ECS was just recently last week. I'm going to spend some time talking about ECS, IVPI, American Co-op, BPCA, lots of great events. And then all the OEM vendor events, right? So there were tons of those, from Konica to Sharp. Sharp had a road show. Ricoh had some stuff going on with a charity event that we were involved with, and several companies. Patricia Ames, if you're watching, she was one of the sponsors too, but Mars and High Tech, lots and lots of companies in our industry were involved in this charity golf event. Putting on the Pink, it's down in Atlanta every September. So just a great bunch of outings, and it really has helped, I think, shape my perspective for the industry. So I'm kind of racing through this part in the first few slides here, because this is stuff that you've either seen in my newsletter or you've seen just in clicking on it, but we're just going to bounce back and forth. These were the biggest articles that we had in 2023. The gist of it is Ricoh's been acquiring, Konica Minolta has been restructuring and moving things around, and Xerox has had an interesting year with some tough earnings and some issues with supply chain. Not that everyone else didn't have those as well, but we're a little closer to those earnings since we're here in the States. So now we're going to really start what we're here to talk about. I'm doing a little bit different presentation than I have typically done in the past, where we really just go through the vendors and the A to Z, what everyone's doing. It's getting more challenging to do that with some vendors. Some vendors are really, really good at keeping us updated. We see them often. They communicate. They, webinars and meetings at their place and meetings with other people. And then there's other vendors who haven't had a meeting, an industry meeting in over 5 years. So we're going to go a different direction. These are the topics. I think based on the year that we had, I'm going to talk about what I feel has been sort of at every meeting, a common theme at all these meetings. ECS was something that we were talking about, certainly for the second half of the year. Acquisitions were a big trend this year. Mega dealers, I want to talk a little bit about these guys. Inflation is something you've all been dealing with, 2023 supply chain, remote work DX, and you can read all of these. So these are what I think are important topics based on what I'm seeing out there, based on, just what's going on in technology. And let's move on. We'll jump right in with ECS. So raise your hand if you were at ECS. Awesome conference. This was the second one in a row that Mike Stramalio put on in the desert in Scottsdale in the middle of winter. You would have thought everybody north of the Mason-Dixon line would have been very happy with the weather, but it was actually pretty cold there and even raining some of the time. But it was unbelievable, the meetings that he had. He had almost 300 people there. I think last year was closer to 200. They really blew it out this year. A couple of companies that were really involved in running it. I think Great America was the main company running it, but then ConnectWise and just virtually all the companies in our industry, most of the companies in our industry were sponsoring in one way or another. There were a few OEMs, you know who you are. You really could have had somebody there. It was a missed opportunity, I think. But there was everybody from small dealers to the mega dealers. You had people at just the biggest and the smallest, people at all levels, and then vendors, OEMs, and just incredible topics. And some of these topics were from industry people, but a lot of these topics were discussed and we had presentations from people outside the industry. And I think the value of that to anybody in our world, whether you're a dealer, whether you're a partner, whether you're an OEM, it's a great way to think outside the box. It's a great way to get some alternative perspective on what's happening in the industry. We had a data analytics AI presentation. That was Tammy Beach. I've got that presentation on my our YouTube channel, the entire presentation. We had multiple presentations on digital transformation. There was also a panel on that. There were dealer panel. There was a panel with dealers on it. There was a diversity panel that Jenny Fisher ran women in leadership roles. And so they had just some great people on that panel. And again, we've got video of all that. They talked about e-commerce. They had Anthony Ski from Keypoint Intelligence talking a little bit about that. And then also he was on a panel, which was facilitated by Ed McLaughlin. So, competitors were up there, multiple people talking from different perspectives about e-commerce, but certainly something that we're going to focus on a bit more in this presentation. Great presentation on hiring heroes. Hiring is something that we've all had issues you've all had issues with, I should say. BTA's got a phenomenal program with Vet Tech and this Hiring Heroes program. Great picture of Valerie holding up one of the Vet Tech shirts, I think, at the event. BTA sent a bunch of people to this year's event. I think that was the first time that they've done that at ECS. Dealer panels, as I mentioned, they had an incredible and chilling, I would say, presentation on cyber insurance that makes me want to change my title from president to anything but president or CEO. That's what the big takeaway I had. But it's just 3 days of nonstop meetings. If anything, if I had to complain, it was just you didn't have time to catch your breath and actually make some phone calls and get some emails done. It was literally one meeting after another, one presentation, and each one was as good or better than the next. So there was just no place to jump out and get any real work done. But man, talk about just a valuable use of your time. And if you weren't there this year, I encourage you, talk to me, talk to Stramalio. Either one will get you in there. But there's tons of people involved with it that'll tell you a little more about it in detail and also help you get in maybe more involved next year. But I highly encourage everybody, just don't miss an opportunity like that. It's an amazing event and then just an incredible way to kick off the year, right? So, get your head on straight, get to the desert. Hopefully it'll be a little warmer next year. We did have a nice end of the event with some golf and that was pretty nice. So moving on. The trend in the industry, it's been the trend in the industry for quite a while now, for several years. It's acquisitions, right? And here's a list of the haves and there's some have-nots that probably aren't on this list that got bought. They're the ones that these guys are picking up. Dex once again leading the way, 8 acquisitions, Kelly Connect 6, RJ Young 4. I want to just before we get too much further into this, these are just the ones that I've seen. I'm sure I've missed some, and then quite frankly, a lot of these guys don't publish them. And if you're out there and you're not publishing them, please change your mind. Send them to me. Send them to Patricia, CJ, ENX. We all love sharing this news. It's really helpful, I think, for everybody to keep up on it. It's not a secret. We're all going to find out. As soon as you contact your leasing companies, we all know. But I generally don't like to publish them unless you're publishing them. So back to this, we're seeing some significant activity, continued activity. UBO, DBB, Fishers, these guys have been Gordon Flesch, Novatech, on fire for several years. Donald McCarthy had a bunch last year. And, based on some conversations I had at ECS, we're going to see a bunch more added this year. I am curious to see if this trend continues at the level that we saw in 2022, right? Interest rates, I think, may play a part into this. There are some companies on this list, they're buying with cash. They don't have a problem with that. There are some companies on this list that are leveraging themselves. And, as we get to the point of interest rates and if they stay where they are, it's going to be more challenging for some of the people on this list, I think, to keep doing that. You also wonder at some point whether some of the companies that are buying with capital, with venture capital, whether that might change. But so far, we haven't seen any change. Last year was full steam ahead, and the rich got much, much richer, and they just kept growing through acquisition. Two companies I was surprised that were in acquisition mode, I think, the year before, and I didn't see anything from them this year, and they're biggies. So Marco and POA. My understanding is both of them will probably start acquiring again this year, and there may even be some news sometime, sooner than later. But they did take their foot off the pedal a little bit. And interesting enough, they did have incredible growth. Both those companies did very well last year, and so that was all organic. You look at somebody like Dex. Dex's growth was unbelievable. And, a big chunk of that, besides organic growth, was obviously, all these companies they picked up. 8 companies means you picked up the revenue from 8 companies. And some of them were some of them were decent size. So, we saw some good companies, good long-time names, brands that are kind of going away this year. And that trend is just going to continue. And that's just something I don't see changing much, although I do think maybe it could slow down a little bit, but it's still going to keep going. There's no reason for that to stop at this point. Outside of the dealer world, we had a lot of industry, what I would call industry acquisitions, right? So Ricoh bought 6 companies that I'm aware of in the US and EU. Some of them were in our world, a couple of them were in other areas. EFI, three companies that they bought last year. And I'm going to break the news right now. EFI had major news today. They've spun off Fiery. Fiery is back where they started. They are now, I think, going to be completely focused on our industry. And, EFI had grown to $1 billion company over the years. And they had moved into some areas that, quite frankly, you guys just aren't in, fabric printing, and these major fabric printing presses. I don't even know what you call how you would describe some of these, but they're just ceramic printers and just things that are just, $500,000, $1 million plus devices that have nothing to do with what we do. So kudos to them for kind of moving this part of their company back into what it originally started as, right? EFI started as EFI Fiery, and that's what we all know them from. And so I think we're going to see a lot more focus from them going forward. They never really pulled out of this industry, but I know a lot of the attention that they had was being focused in other areas. Their print show right now is going on EFI Connect, which is now called, I believe it's EPS Connect. They sold that property last year. That's one of the things in acquisitions. I believe that's actually one of the 3. I counted that in the acquisitions. They sold that, not bought it. Xerox bought 3 companies. Keypoint was very active this year. Great America even bought some assets this year. HP bought someone. Clover bought someone. OpenText. Arlington acquired. Dato became part of Kaseya. ConnectWise acquired Crawford Technologies Bureau. So you're just seeing tons and tons of action, and it's just our industry and peripheral industries. There's no secret here that we're going to have less. We've got more companies than we need. We have too many printer companies. We all know that, and there's no reason that we shouldn't see some of these companies coming together a little bit. That's going to continue, and we've already got one out of the gate this year. Although we're mostly through January, we only have one out of the gate. So maybe it is slowing down for all the acquisitions, but I do expect it to continue. So mega dealers. Moving on to this, mega dealers are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and we're not where we were 20-something years ago when I was at Icon and Mr. Doyle was had Danka, and we had Global Imaging, and the world was a little different. Those companies were a little bigger, but these guys are catching them. Dex is catching them. Flex Marco, POA, Visual Edge. So I made a list here, the top 5, what I would consider the top 5. Open for argument. I'm happy to redo this list. I did it alphabetically so as not to offend anybody. I think we can all agree Dex is the biggest at this moment, filling in behind them, again, alphabetically. But these are what I think are the top 5. Visual Edge, maybe it's Impact, maybe it's UBO, maybe it's RJ Young. A lot of this is what people have told me. A lot of this is just research I've done on my own. But when you look over on the left side of the screen, you look at the amount of revenue that these guys are doing. My estimate, top 5 dealers in this industry are doing $2 billion in annual revenue, right? $2 billion combined. When you add the next 5 on, we add another $1 billion. I would even I would guess that if we go to that next level, that next 10 through 20, that's possibly another 1 to 2 billion. So these companies are growing. We've got this reputation, and the sky is falling, and everybody's not everybody. There's a few naysayers that just have a lot of negative things to say about where things are in this industry. And I look at some of these numbers, and I don't understand it. Right? There is plenty of money to be made. Print is in decline. We all know that. But we are, many of you are approaching, if not surpassing, pre-pandemic numbers. And, there's a lot of pie out there. And while the pie is shrinking, there's still plenty of opportunity to take that pie from competitors. And many of you are doing that. I've seen companies, even organically, just grow and grow and grow. Flex Technology Group, POA. I've seen them open offices. I've seen these guys just through managed print services, just through hard copy output, grow and grow and grow. And, some of these companies, it's amazing. I would put Dex in that category as well. They're much more focused on print. They're really not focused nearly as much on managed services as maybe some of the others, right? Visual Edge, Marco, I think half their revenue comes from managed services. They are all in on that. And you look at some of these others that are still growing and growing and growing, through acquisition, but also, like I said, through organic means, and just because they're getting bigger. And it's amazing that they're doing that through print. And that's not to say that, Dex and Flex and these guys aren't making money in other areas, but their print is growing. Their managed print is growing. It goes to show, if you've got a good team, if you've got a good plan, a good strategy, there is plenty of opportunity in print out there. And don't let anybody tell you that there isn't. If you're that medium-sized dealer, if you're that smaller size dealer, what can you do to stay competitive? As these guys get bigger and bigger, they are, and this is no secret. It's always been this way. The bigger you are, the better your pricing. And there are things you can do about this, right? There are other things going on in this industry that a lot of you guys are learning, and things you need to change that can make you competitive, right? One of those things that kind of popped in my head over the last week, I visited a dealer. I visited Carolina Business Equipment down in South Carolina, and John Ekstrom just opened up a new warehouse. And it was kind of interesting because I was thinking, you don't often see you guys all opening warehouses, but he's not the first. And I saw a couple others earlier in the year that their warehouses were busting because they were taking all the stock they could get. And where we have this just-in-time model right now, where all the vendors virtually want you to stock, to get away from the stocking up, and they want you to They want you to just drop ship. They want you to go straight to the customer, and all that was such a good idea until we had this pandemic, and then they couldn't ship it, right? And then the drop times went from a couple of days or a week or two to months, and so if you're going to be waiting weeks or months, or your competitor is going to say, hey, I've got something in stock, I can get it there tomorrow, which is better. So, I think we're starting to see a bit of a reversal, and some dealers are starting to take stock. So that's one thing you can do, is to remain competitive. If your competitor is waiting on 1,400 machines because they're doing, the just-in-time business model, and you've got some machines, you may get some business. And even though you weren't the least expensive, maybe it gets you in the door. So I encourage you to, maybe revisit that strategy internally. You look at other opportunities for you to find places to move into, new revenue sources. BTA is an incredible incredible place for this. Some of you watching this may not be BTA members. I'm sure most of you are, right? That's why you're watching this, but I'm sure a few of you aren't. And I encourage you to become a BTA member. There are so many services. Brent will tell you all about them. But to me, just for the purpose of this slide, right, you're just going to learn about new companies. All the companies over on the right side, I found out about from BTA, from coming to their meetings. So, if you're looking for something that maybe fits in with what you do, but isn't it, is there a new partner, a new supplier, you're going to find it at a BTA conference. Or maybe you're just looking for a new direction, a new area to move into that fits your model and is kind of an easy slide for you. You're going to find it there. Another great area. This is, to me, just an incredible cost leveler for a small dealer, for a medium-sized dealer is IBPI. So IBPI is the buyers group. It's the biggest buyers group in our industry. I think there's over 500 members, if I remember correctly. Mark Rice runs it, a wonderful person. And so what it is they've got this huge catalog of member companies that supply you. High Tech just joined. I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a whole bunch of them, and you can go to the ibpi.net website, or is it .org? I'll put a link in it. You can get to it if you email me, or even Brent, I'm sure, can get it to you. But what it does is it gets you best buying power out of all the companies in there. So, you're buying at the highest level. My understanding is companies, when they join IBPI, they commit to providing IBPI and their 500 plus members with the best possible pricing. So you're going to be buying at levels that, you normally wouldn't get to buy at, especially if you're a smaller dealer. And so what does that do for you? Well, chances are most of the companies, or a lot of companies you're doing business with, I would guarantee you many companies, if not most, you're already doing business with them. And so, Pollock and Pollock is another one that pops into my head, but you're already doing business with these guys, right? So if you're doing business with them, why not join IBPI? There's a small sign up, a one-time sign up. You get rebate checks based on the business you're doing every year. And I was at the meeting they had earlier this year, last year, that is, and in Orlando, and Mark gave out like $800,000 worth of rebate checks, which covered most of the companies in there, their initial sign-up fee, but then they got money back. So, this is stuff that you're buying anyway. You're leaving money on the table. So here's another place that you can, if you're not doing it, that you'll get checks in, and that's better. That's going to improve your margins. Doug Albrechts, I believe, I was just told, I don't know if I was supposed to say this, but I said it. So he's now on the board. And so it just shows you the reach, the access that you're going to have. You're going to be able to talk to people of all different types of dealers, and big and small and medium. And you're going to meet all these great partners. And that moves me into another thing you can do. If you're not in a peer group, if you're not in an American Co-op or a BPCA or all of the other ones that I have listed here, they are the best resource I think you can get. These are your peers. Many of these groups are done geographically, so you're not going to be sitting in there next to a competitor. And these guys open up. They, a lot of them I've seen become incredible friends. Many have known each other for years because of these groups. And, it's just a great way to talk kind of offline about your vendors, about what are you doing that's working? Who are you using for leasing? What do you like about them? Who are you using for your aftermarket, for your supplies? What do you think of Arlington or Clover or some of these others? And, it's just a great way for you to find out what's going on. There's just so much that's been done over the years already that, for you to reinvent the wheel seems silly, right? These meetings are usually held at incredible facilities. Usually they have great guests come and speak. And then you spend a lot of time, just discussing with your friends, your peers, just different things that you can do that you may not have thought of, or maybe you help somebody else. It's almost a mentoring program. So we look over, maybe on the right, we're looking at, some of the companies I think that you can also look at if you're trying to, how can I get more margins? How can I improve, squeeze the dollar a little bit more? Because, we're going to talk about it more in another slide. You guys are, you are being pressured while you're all profitable right now and you're all making a lot of money. It's tough sometimes either to get product, and we've had issues with supply chain, and sometimes you just can't get it, or sometimes it's just too expensive and you want an alternative for your customer. Arcoa, Arlington, Clover, Caton, Mars, Nine Star, and G&G Pollock. These are all companies I work with. There are other companies out there that are also great companies as well. But, there's no shortage of places for you to turn. There's no shortage of people that you can talk to about, maybe finding some better margins. Maybe you can find parts that you were having a hard time finding before. Maybe you can find supplies that are a lot more cost effective for a customer, especially on a really old machine. You know how it is when, machine gets 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, old, right? It's just the supplies start getting dated. The manufacturer keeps upping the cost on them to you in order to get you to, hopefully get that customer to buy a new machine. But some customers are not going to buy that machine. They're going to keep it, and your margins go out the window. So that's when you can obviously turn to some of these. Moving to inflation. This is something that you guys are just, we're all dealing with it, but your companies are dealing with it head on, right? Your customers are dealing with it, so they're strapped. You're dealing with it, and all right, I mean, it's coming down a little bit, but it's not down, right? Your fuel is up 45% since 2020. Your average worker cost is up 5% since 21. The cost of your drivers increased 12% since 2020. Hardware parts are up in cost. Hardware is up. Parts, supply costs, all of that is up. So while it's cooling, your prices are not dropping. It's more expensive to bring people on, right? You're going through, you're working, either with maybe your recruiting services, or you're working with HR recruiting consulting companies, PassShare, like, from Great America. There's plenty of others that do that as well. You might be working with one of them, but there's all these things cost money. And so as a dealer, you're getting hit everywhere. I'm going to go back a slide, but back to what can you do? That's when you call somebody like Arcoa to see what you can do with, those end of life electronics that are just sitting in your closet. You could be making money off of that, scrapping it. Arlington, tons of parts. Clover, you could be buying Reman printers that are very cost effective, HP Reman printers, or you could buy supplies from them. Caton, same thing. Mars, trading in those machines. Arcoa does that too. Mars does that. Mars will help you with your logistics. So all these companies are here to help you. There's a lot of alternatives. Again, coming back to a BTA meeting, that's where you're going to learn about all of these. So we're going to spend some time talking about everybody's favorite subject, the supply chain. And I'm going to put on my, I'm looking at my crystal ball, and I'm going to see what I can figure out. I don't know anything. I'm not an economics person. I'm a copier guy. I was a copier guy because I didn't study hard enough. I'm just regurgitating, what I've heard other people say. What I can tell you, after being out there in the field all year, after visiting, so many dealers, things are much better, right? And you're all seeing it. You're seeing it on LinkedIn. Everybody's opening up, posting pictures of pallets and pallets of hardware. I mentioned I was at CBE yesterday. John had just tons of Toshiba on his shelves, tons of Sharp on his shelves. I mean, Sharp, everyone knows, did pretty well during the pandemic with their supply chain, but it's still nice seeing these boxes just filling that brand new warehouse of his. So things are getting better. Konicka's catching up. Here, Xerox is even starting to catch up. Kyocera, I think in A3 has started catching up, although I think A4, they're still struggling from what I hear. A4, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more, A4 is more challenging, especially for a company like a Kyocera that is really all in on A4 and A3. They're very strong in A4. And the chip problems that we've had, that makes it more difficult. We'll talk about that in a second for someone like a Kyocera who's got to make choices on where they put those chips. And other companies have that issue as well. Sharp's had to pull chips from different parts of their hardware, but Sharp's not as dependent on A4 as Kyocera is. So back to this though. So, we look at what's improved. Container issues have improved. The ports have improved, right? We don't have 60, 100 ships sitting off of the ports in California like we did. When you fly over there, and I have recently, they're not there anymore. You see a couple out there. I guess part of this had to do with they built a lot more capacity at the ports. So there was so much coming in that I guess they just had nowhere to put it. So the boats had to sit until they could get the stuff out of the warehouses. And then we had the shipping issues, right? And trucking and trains and freight and all that. So it all was just a perfect storm. But apparently that's gotten much better. Thankfully, you know, I know a lot of companies spent bank on shipping over the last 2 years, last year especially. And some companies, you know, spoke to us quite a bit about what they had spent just in air freight, right? Toshiba was one that had very quietly been really doing a pretty decent, comparatively a decent job, because, you know, Larry was spending a lot of money shipping everything over in airplanes, and that's just something that you know, they can't do forever, and thankfully it sounds like that's going to get better. So A3 is catching up, has caught up with some vendors. I mentioned A4, and back to the chip shortage. So we still have a chip shortage. And if you saw the panel discussing that, Larry, Mike, Mark Matthews from Epson, Mike from Konica Minolta, and then I think it was John from HP. They all had a lot to say on this subject. I'm going to post that at some point pretty soon. You can see that entire panel from ECS on our YouTube channel. But, you know, they really got into a lot of this, and some of the takeaways I had. One of the things that, you know, really is scary is, you know, all these companies are making a lot of noise about, well, we're moving our manufacturing, we're getting out of China, we're moving it away from China. And, you know, that's going to happen either way. China, from what I understand, again, my limited brain with economics, you know, there are a lot more economical countries now than China as far as manufacturing. Mexico is one that jumps in, Vietnam is another. A host of them. And so what's happening is, you know, OEMs are starting to already move their manufacturing elsewhere. What they have not moved yet are the chips. And so there's two kinds of chips. There's, my understanding is, the good chips and the bad chips. I shouldn't say the bad chips, but the really functional and then the less functional. The less functional chips, the ones that are in great demand, that are in everything, those are still made in China. And that's not going to change anytime soon. And so we've got two issues there. One is we still have a shortage on those chips because of the fires that they had 2 years ago. They don't have the capacity up to speed yet. And the other problem is possibly impending. But, you know, we're all watching, and it's not been in the news as much lately, but the COVID thing in China, right? And you know, for the way it went down the last 2 years, I don't care which side you were on, left or right, we are where we are. And I think we can all agree we're in a better spot than China, because right now, China's got, like, you know, I looked it up this morning, there's 15,000 people passing in China, passing away every day right now. They are in the midst of this. They are where we were 2 years ago. And to me, the scary part is, obviously the loss of life is just horrific. And I wish, you know, they had done, in some ways, you know, what we did and some other countries did to be where we are right now, where it seems to be less of an issue, but they're not. They're in the middle of it. And so what worries me is, you know, if they start shutting things down, and it looks like they're going to keep things open, but, you know, you wonder what the impact is going to be on their manufacturing when they've got, you know, 500,000 people, that's being reported. It's got to be more than that, I would imagine. But 500,000 people have it right now. You wonder what impact that's going to have on their manufacturing. You know, you saw what it did to us 2 years ago when we were just getting into it. And, you know, every other day there was an industry that was shutting down for a month or two. And in our world, it was, you know, agriculture. It was, you know, this week you're not getting your chicken wings, and next week you're not getting cars and tires. And it just, every week was a shortage. Toilet paper, remember that? Everybody's got a little more toilet paper and paper towel in their storage right now, I bet, than they did 2 or 3 years ago. But that's where China is right now. So that concerns me going forward, because these chip shortages, the biggest area it hits us is A4, I think. I think we're all learning, you know, Sharp learned, and I think others may have followed or also learned that, you know, if you pull chips out of, if you defeature some of your A3 equipment, you can still sell the A3 equipment and keep those, you know, keep the products flowing. A4 is different. And the reason is just scale, right? You know, for every one, I'm going to make this up, but for every one, you know, A3 machine that you sell, you're probably selling, you know, what, multiple, 3, 4, 5, 10 A4 products. I don't know. But it's more. So, you know, just in scale, that means for every one A3 chip you have, you know, if you're going to put that in A4, at a fraction of the price, you're just not going to make as much. So decisions have to be made by a lot of these manufacturers. And so I think that's why they tend to be going more into the A3 products, even though maybe they're defeatured. They're still very, very much functional. I'm curious to see whether any of the OEMs decide, clean sheet, we're going to start just building something fresh from scratch that uses different chips, right? There are different chips to be used, and maybe they can find some other ways to do it, but that's a 2-year window, and we're this far along, and I haven't seen anybody coming out with it. So the supply chain thing to me is still going to be an issue this year. There's going to be the haves, there's going to be the have-nots. Some OEMs are going to do better than others, and what we've seen as a result of this, as you have seen some OEMs picking up dealers, specifically Sharp, and they picked a good one to sponsor because they've got a lot of good things that I'm saying about them, but they had a good year, right? Like they were, call them lucky, call them smart. It's one or the other, or maybe a mixture of both, but they did really, really well. And dealers will be the first ones to tell you, they, especially dealers that are multi-line, they saw how it was from other manufacturers, and Sharp's communication was good. And they kept them, they kept product in their warehouse. And so, back to the original point on this slide, or the previous slide, you're going to see, I think a lot of dealers are reconsidering that stocking up thing and getting rid of that warehouse. And, it's one of those things that makes sense on paper, seems like a good idea at the time, but then, you get one little hiccup, you get one little bump in the road, and then the ships start, they didn't come, or, it's one thing. We always had to deal with back orders, and you always had to deal with some, we had parts problems or supplies problems, or, but it was always one product, or it just, there were ways around it, but we've hit ourselves, we painted ourselves into this corner where you've got many companies who've gone to this model where, one product is the whole product line, right? You guys know who you are, and you go in there and you set up the machine, and then you ask, basically, which speed level did the customer pay for, and you dial that in, probably not with a real dial, but there's something in the setup where you set it up, and this machine is 30 pages a minute for this customer, and that machine is 60 or 40 for that customer. But what happens is, when there's a chip problem with that one engine, all of that stops coming. Whereas maybe with 3 or 4 products in the family, maybe this category got shut down for a couple of months, but maybe that one kept coming. So I don't know, there's lots that's being done about that. There's a lot more people doing, trying to figure this out, and they're much smarter than I am. So this is something that is going to just be a pain in the neck for a lot of companies going forward. And it is something that, I would say you really want to just create a strategy. What am I going to do if, what am I going to do if these stop showing up? What am I going to do if brand A isn't there? Should I get another brand? Should I talk to another brand? Do I have multiple A4 options in case my main one doesn't show up, right? So you really want to have a plan B, and many of you probably do, but a lot of you could probably use that. Moving on, this is a great slide for me. I feel like this puts a smile on my face. We had a lot of interviews early on where we talked about remote work, and remote work is all the rage. And, most of you, a lot of you are working from home watching this, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that trend, I've said it all along, I don't think that's going to continue. I don't see it happening long term. There are companies that have vested interests. You have infrastructures built around people coming to work. You have bosses that are just old school, and they like to see people in the office. Now, is that to say everybody's going to come back to work? No. I think a lot of us realize that there are some times when people can be flexible. They can, work from home. There can be exceptions, but every one of these companies on this list in the last 2 months has come out with some sort of statement that has said their people are coming back to work. Some are full-time, some are saying 2-3 days a week, 4 days a week, but it's happening. Management's sick of it. And quite frankly, this, and I could have done some slides on this, and I wanted to, and I didn't. But talking about the next generations, there was a great ECS presentation on all the different generations. I think actually Marusik might have mentioned it in his as well. But just the differences in talking to these generations. This next latest generation coming into our workforce, they collaborate. They like to work together. They were very team oriented, and we can say a lot of stuff about them. We can bust on them. I love busting on the other generations, but one of the things they do really well is they work well together. And, it's not all about sitting on Zoom calls. It's about face to face. There is such value to it, and a lot of the companies, a lot of the CEOs look, at the model, and they say, you know what, I don't have control over my people. We're getting work turned in, but we're losing our professionalism. The biggest thing to me is you're losing culture, right? I think of certain companies in this industry, the culture that they have, and when they were home from home, I've had conversations with them, with their senior people, and they've told me, it was, there was an impact. There was a loss of culture, and they've got to rebuild that. And they are bringing people back to the office. Great America, a great example. That is a company that is absolutely built on culture, and you would know that if you visited there. Those guys, it is such a family. It is such a team. And that was one of the companies I couldn't imagine how they were working from home all the time, all alone and all on their own. And this is a company where all of these people do work remotely all the time, right? I mean, you see them at conferences, they're working, they're in their hotel rooms, they're set up to work remotely. But to never have that contact, to never be together for, whatever it was, a year and a half, 2 years, it takes its toll. And I think a lot of the bosses, I think the CEOs, the executives, they're ready for their people to come back. They want to see people, they want to see butts in the seats, right? They paid for all this, and they want people back in the office. And so I think this is the year that we're going to see a lot of companies instill policies like what you're seeing on the screen, where people are going to come back to work. And so what does that look like? Well, to us, this is now moving from remote work to, hybrid. We were talking hybrid last year, but it's becoming, I think it's going to evolve more. This year will be, the pendulum's going to swing back, right? You had a lot of power with the employees back last year and the year before, right? Everybody can't hire anyone, can't find anyone. Unemployment is so low. I think that's changing. You've seen layoffs, you've seen tech layoffs. I should have probably done a slide on that. But you've seen back to the whole inflation thing, companies are cutting back. There are layoffs. And so that, I think is starting to push the power back into the hands of the employer. So when an employee tells you they don't want to come in, you find another employee, right? I think the days of putting up with that are long gone. Now, I do think hybrid, as I mentioned, is still part of this. Nobody's ending this. Nobody wants to be that cruel, mean CEO. And I'm just going to say, no, you're coming back. I think for the most part, people are going to still have a little flexibility. But what does that mean to you? That's huge, huge opportunity, right? To me, one of the greatest things that could have happened to you guys, to our industry, was in some ways this pandemic that sent everybody home. Because for years, your IT, any of you, especially you in IT, but you're all going in there. When's your lease up? What are you doing for IT? And you're managing the seats and you're doing all that, and it's great. Well, now you've got all these people home, and the risk of security breaches when these guys go home, and it's just, I'm working from home, I'm logging in, I'll figure it out. When they're trying to get to the server, when they're trying to get to their files, when they're printing on an unsecured printer that was just purchased on Amazon that's not set up properly, when they're scanning, when they're using USB drives, when their kids are using their work gear, there's vulnerabilities, and that makes the customer completely vulnerable. So any of you that are in cybersecurity, any of you that are, that have A4 products, which is hopefully every one of you listening, scanners, just any collaboration software, Zoom, any Microsoft 360, just anything that you could be selling that could help somebody be productive working from a remote office, a home office, even office furniture, or economic, chairs and desks and all of this stuff. People are having health problems now. I go, myself included, I go for some physical therapy every week for a hip injury that turned out was because my posture at my desk was terrible. And I have a set office, right? What about these people that are sitting at their kitchen office or their dining room, or, in their chair, like over one I have over there, right? A big comfy chair. That's not good for 7 hours, 6 hours a day. So opportunities to help people work more effectively at home, more efficiently, and be healthier, right? You can make a difference. And so I think, excuse me, this back to work movement that we're going to start seeing, that we're starting to see, I don't think that has any impact on you. I think there's so much opportunity for you guys there that it's just something I think you should capitalize on. So the buzzword of 2020, digital transformation. Here's the wiki definition, right? I think a couple of years ago, we called it IoT. I think a couple of years before that, we called it something else. It's all of that, right? It's just taking digital technology, using data, tying products and services together, dashboards, letting things work together, right? So it's a cohesive, it's not really a platform. It's digitizing things that are analog. It's taking the digital, it's taking the digital properties and allowing and tying them together, allowing them to communicate, allowing them to talk together. So that's my 30,000 foot copier guy explanation of digital transformation. I can tell you that was at just about, I'm not going to say every meeting I was at, but man, it seemed like it was everywhere, right? If you look over on the right, every single one of these manufacturers, some much more detailed than others, but the point is every one of them has content on their website or tied to their website talking about digital transformation, DX, right? I went through 10 minutes of a presentation earlier last year, at the beginning of the year, and this was really the kickoff to DX in my world, where I thought, okay, here we go. This is a big thing. It was Konica Minolta, and they were DX, and I had to look up what was DX because I didn't know, right? I didn't know we shortened digital transformation. We have yet another acronym for our fun little industry, but it was just sort of the shot across my bow where I was like, I better really look into this. And they brought up the Wayne Taylor guys, which was awesome. They brought up Ricky and Wayne of Wayne Taylor Racing. They had the car in the showroom and all that. And so the point of what they were talking was data, right? And using data and all the data points that these guys with their race car have on every aspect. And I forget the number of sensors they have in that car, but I think it was in the thousands. And they are looking at everything they can and just trying to get any kind of advantage out of it that they can find. And they use digital transformation as to help them wrap their arms around this. And all they do is analyze data. Man, the amount of work, this is not NASCAR of the 80s and 90s, and you just drive as fast as you can with the pedal to the metal. There is science involved in this. There is technology. For all of you who are into this kind of stuff, they are racing the Rolex this weekend. Mike Mateo will be there. And Drew and all the gang will be down there at Daytona. But watch it, because this race was what they were talking about. This is the first race they're going to be using hybrids. So this is going to be killer fast cars. First time they're racing as hybrids, Acura and all the other brands out there. But just a really wild race. But to me, the cool part of it is the reason that they're going to be, what they're doing is they're really just making use of all this data, all the information that they've learned from, the batteries and how do they make them last longer and how do they drive more effectively. So, but anyway, that was just an example of digital transformation. That was, that was Konica Minolta's big example. HP in their conference this year, they had a big breakout where they discussed that as well at their Amplify show. And just lots and lots of other, content from all of these OEMs on here. This one really caught me off guard. I'm sort of late on this, I guess, but the end of the cloud, is that happening? Are you guys seeing that? So at ECS, at the Executive Connection Conference, another thing I learned was that there is a new movement back to on-prem. Back to moving towards, we are seeing a movement back towards on-premises servers. They will be more powerful than you ever could have imagined, but they're getting bigger, faster, actually smaller, faster and more efficient. There's a lot of reasons for this, and I was blown away by this because I really just thought the whole movement. A lot of my clients most of my clients are very, very focused on the cloud. They're not even where they want to be yet. They're still, evolving. They're still getting there. They're still improving. And now we're starting to see customers push back and say they want on-prem also. Not not that they don't want cloud, not that they're pulling back from cloud, but customers that were early adapters, they're seeing value to on-prem, to this hybrid model. There are files, just looking at video, right? Just look at video right now. There is so much video being created in everybody's feed and everybody's workflow, right? It's just something that's creeping into every part of what we do, and the difference in file size is staggering, right? Exponentially larger, right? I'm working with files. I mean, I took all these videos I mentioned at that conference last week. I probably took over a dozen videos, maybe closer to 24 videos. And all of those videos, all of them were over a gig, all of them. And I'm trying to move those around. I'm trying to upload those. And my example is not really that great an example because I'm just a small shop and I use some pretty basic, simple tools. But if I was a big customer of yours, and the bigger the customer, the more complex it gets, especially multiple locations. When I'm trying to put backup into the cloud, when I'm trying to move these files, when the cloud is just trying to grab them and back, I'm racing through space, which becomes extremely expensive because you're paying for every gigabyte of cloud, right? Every terabyte of cloud space that you have. So customers want, what they want to bring it home. They want to get their arms around the economics of it. They also want the redundancy. In some cases, it's starting to become quicker for on-prem, and just for recovery, disaster. A lot of times, there's companies even mandating it that they want on-prem. I stole this from an IDC report. Thank you, Keith, and your team. It is online, so I'm not really stealing it. There is a link to the report that came from, and it was a sponsored report. I wasn't familiar with the company, but I thought this was a great, statistic. 71% of respondents in this study, they expected to move or partially move their workloads running in public cloud to a dedicated IT environment within the next 2 years. 71% of people that responded in this study are looking to bring back their what they brought to the cloud and to bring it back in there. So I thought that was wild. Moving on to e-commerce. So this is one that just, you can't go to a meeting without them talking about e-commerce. And this is something you have to look at, and don't put your head in the sand. Don't be scared of it. You need to face it. You're all entrepreneurs. You're all running companies that have been around for years. You've survived everything so far, right? But e-commerce is a whole nother world. So I'm just going to tell you right now, if you haven't looked, maybe you don't want to look, but every one of your brands is now selling their printers online. And I didn't spend a lot of time at this. I just spent, maybe 10 minutes looking before I wrote this slide. Every one of your brands is selling printers on Amazon.com right now. Everyone but one. Sharp is the only one. Seems like a Sharp commercial, but I guess they paid for this to sponsor it. So at least they got, they're getting some good news out of it. But, I commend them for not selling anything on there. Or maybe they're just not smart, but, and maybe everyone else is smart, but Sharp is protecting you. Sharp is looking out for you. Sharp, I think, would be the first, just like all the other OEMs on here, who tell you need to get into this, right? And I'm sure they have plans and programs, and a lot of these companies have talked to us and have said that they want their dealers to do it. Now, it's one thing to say you want your dealers doing it. It's another thing to say you want your dealers doing it and you have the stuff online. And man, I think these OEMs are being, they're doing what they need to do, and business is business. And, this is showing you what's happening out there. It's already happening. And my advice to you is you need a strategy, right? You've even got one OEM out there. I did see A3 on there. I couldn't believe it, but there was A3 on there. And maybe there's more OEMs doing it. There's no shortage of supplies on there. The point is your customers are on there looking. And, at a recent meeting, I was talking to somebody and I know there's a lot of skepticism around e-commerce. I'm not suggesting go and build an Amazon. There are a million different ways to do it. We mentioned Anthony Ski, BLI, Key Point Intelligent. They've got a program. There's others, right? Ed McLaughlin did that panel there. He was talking, he's got a program, right? There are plenty others, and I don't care if it's this one or that one, or it doesn't matter who it is. you need to talk to somebody about this. You really need to find out, what can you do? Do you create a program that's for your own customers? Maybe it's a behind the firewall kind of thing. Maybe it's just as simple as letting them go buy this stuff. You see all these Kyocera models, you see all these Xerox models, you see all these HP models. Maybe instead of having these guys go online and see it there, maybe they go behind the firewall and they buy it. And, they're already buying from you, so make it easier for them to buy, right? So that they don't go and just say, oh, I don't want to deal with the salespeople. I just want to go online. I just want it to show up, right? Some things don't need to be that complicated. And it doesn't need to be printers. It can be supplies. It can be anything else. But, whatever you can do to get your own customers to stay with you and not go there and see that. You don't want them on Amazon looking at printers. You just don't, unless they're yours, right? And none of you, probably almost none of you are on there. What else can you do? Like, I know one of the problems that people talked about, have spoken to me about is, and I know how it is because I would do the same thing. Excuse me, if I'm online and I'm looking at this, Kyocera Ecosys printer, well, if I'm on your website looking at it, and what am I going to do? I'm going to go to Amazon and see if I can find it there. I'm going to just Google it to see if I can find it, and I'm going to find 3 other, places that have it cheaper. So maybe you don't put it on the front of your website. Maybe you put it behind a firewall. Maybe there are other products. I don't know, but there's got to be something that you can do. I'm happy to talk to you about it. I don't make money on this, but I can, I can tell you what I've seen, what I've heard. But I think you need to get somebody involved in your world that's a professional. One of the companies I mentioned, some of the other companies that are out there, there's a bunch, man. And you guys know who they are. But, from what I have seen, I'm just going to put it out there. I don't think any of you right now have what I would consider as a good, effective e-commerce website. There's a handful that have stuff. And I know some of you are going to email me and say, oh, I have it. And you know what? And I apologize if I missed yours. I did look at, a handful of the big guys, and I know a couple of them are actually rolling some out. So it's in process with some of these bigger companies, but it's not there. This is your year. This is the year you need to do this. You need to figure out how to do it. This is an investment that you just have to have some kind of presence. Google, as far as search results, for as long as this lasts, we're going to talk about Google and possible its demise on the next slide. But right now, Google is everything. And, having people find you, find your printers, find your storefront, even if you're not selling printers, as long as you've got an opportunity to sell things online to the world. You all have a website. All you have to do is monetize it, put some stuff on there that people can buy. So I think the last real slide here, I can't believe I'm almost going to make it on time. I can almost picture Brent holding up the 1 hour sign, but effective AI is here. We are there. Another wiki quote here. Thank you, Wiki. I think a lot of us learned the words ChatGPT in the last month or two. We are now on ChatGPT 3. So ChatGPT, my layman's terms, as somebody who's actually used it, because I thought I just had to learn about it. So basically, it's a website created by open architecture, AI, I forget who. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Anybody can go to it. When you can get to it, the site is constantly crashing because as more people find out about it, more people are logging onto it. It's free at the moment. I think there's going to be a business plan at some point. You sign on to this thing, and basically, it's almost like just a chat window. And you type instructions in this. It's AI driven. You type instructions into it that say like, I don't know, what it does is it searches articles that are out there. It searches content that's on the web, and it searches, apparently it's 175 billion parameters, right? So you can say to it, you can give it commands like write an article on print management. Give me a 500-page article on print management, and it will research it, and in seconds you will have an article better written than anyone I would do that talks about print management, multiple paragraphs. It'll cite things if you want. Give me 500, give me 1,000 words. You can, if you're a coder, if you're writing code and you have code that's just not working, you're trying to put it on your website and it's not working, you can say, please fix this code, and drop the code in there, and it will fix the code, right? And it's just, so these in the last couple of weeks are just some little things that I've had, just questions. You can ask it simple questions and it will give you answers. But what's interesting, what's really cool about this is, we're at the point where we have AI right now, and AI already, we already know you've got bots, you've got things that you're able to use it for. What this does is this just simplifies everything. This makes AI useful, right? So now I can just type in a question. So this is why I wrote on there, code red for Google. So ChatGPT 4 is coming out at some point this year. It is going to be exponentially better than ChatGPT 3, which is incredible right now. It's just mind blowing. If you start trying it out, you may just come up with dozens of ways to use it. Just from, the HP person, Tammy, she talked about in her presentation how she was answering emails with it. She would say, hey, write an email saying this, telling them and saying, ABC, and it wrote an email. And so, and she copied and pasted it and dropped it. And so it's a time saver. It's a personal assistant. But this next level is going to be, it's going to be mind-blowing. And so they talk about how, this may actually be the end of mankind at some point, but this is the big first step of AI. This is where it becomes useful. And I mentioned code red for Google. So, well, the problem is for Google is, how Google works now. You type in a question and what do you get? 1,000 pages, starting with sponsored content of all the things Google wants you to see. And then you see everybody's web page and you see all the different options. Well, that's not how ChatGPT works. ChatGPT is just going to give you the answer. So when I say, what are some print management companies, it's going to list, here are some print management companies. It's not going to give me all the websites. It's just going to give me what it finds. It's the next part of this is when it talks about data driven, and that's why it's going to just blow up exponentially. It's going to be able to do things with this data. You're going to be able to ask it questions. You're going to be able to ask about weather patterns. You're going to be able to ask it complex math, and it's just going to answer it. And it's just, we're getting to a point where it's just content writers are going to be out of jobs. I may be out of a job. It's a very interesting time, very scary. But what it does for you is, as we go forward, open your eyes, open your minds. You may find places to be able to use chatbots on your website as you get into your e-commerce. You may be able to have an intelligent chatbot instead of just, a very, very simple chatbot that's on some of your sites right now, which to me, honestly, is more annoying than helpful. The chat I've seen from just about anyone, and I'm not just talking about our industry, everybody, Delta is the worst, right? I'm on theirs all the time. And they're useless. But this next level, this ChatGPT, this is going to make those seem like an actual person. And the key to all of this is that we've hit the point where AI is now becoming conversational. You will be able to use real words, real communication English, genuine English, and you're going to be able to get real answers. As we wind up, here's what's happened in 2023. Just a quick thing. I mean, already the year's filling up. A busy February. I'm going to see a lot of you. March, April, May. We've got lots of BTA shows. That button on the pink I have here is in September. So that is my last slide. We are out of time. Coming up, we've got the next one. We're going to have Lee Davis, Deborah Hawkins. You're going to see a great presentation by these guys from Keypoint. Always great data. And I am only 2 minutes over, and I appreciate so much you guys who are still with us and still listening. I just love doing this. I love talking to you. If you have something going on at your business, at your dealership, if you're in our industry and you've got something that you want Andy or Andy and Jake, or just Jake, we are happy to come. We love visiting and just learning about what you guys do. Brent, thank you so much for having me. Any questions if there's any time?
All right, very good, Andy. Appreciate your willingness to present all the insight and wisdom and observations that you've shared with us today. That's great. I do have chat and Q&A open. I'm not seeing anything at this point. So if you've got something on your mind you wanted to ask, you can type it in. And in the meantime, let me mention that the webinar was recorded. You can probably see that on the screen. A link to the recording will be available on the BTA website tomorrow. You would just go to bta.org/BMB archives, BMB as in building my business. So bta.org/BMB archives. And you will need your username and password. You will also be able to download a PDF of today's PowerPoint. As Andy mentioned, our next webinar will take place on 4 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, February the 16th. That webinar is titled The State of the Channel, What Are the Others Doing? It was actually the result of a survey of dealers, so it'll be kind of dealer perspective shared in that. It will be presented by Deborah Hawkins and Lee Davis of Keypoint Intelligence. While you're on the BTA website, on that page for Building My Business, note that we have recordings of almost all of our previous webinars. Today is our 197th webinar in this series. We started in January 2008. And after a few webinars, it occurred to us we should be recording these, and we did, and they're archived on the website. Many of them are timeless in nature, so you might want to peruse that list when you're on the website and take a look so you can watch the full webinar. I do not see any questions or comments there. You can certainly reach out to Andy or myself at any time, and you can keep up with a lot of the information on the industry by following Andy and subscribing to his newsletter. Andy, again, thank you very much for your willingness to present.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. There is one question.
Oh, there you go.
Thank you for that, Jerry. Jen, have I gotten golf lessons yet? Yes. And yeah, I need more. Let's just say I need more.
Yes, but you're not there yet, I guess, right?
No, I'm not quite there yet. Great seeing you, Brent. I will see you at the latest at the BTA event in Orlando at spring break. Can't wait.
All right, we're looking forward to it. So with that, we'll thank everybody for attending today. We thank you for your membership in the association. We look forward to your participation in our next Building My Business webinar on February 16th. With that, we will go ahead and end the webinar for today and say goodbye for now. Thank you all.
Cheers.